So this video was going to be an indie reviewer episode, but with all the stuff going down right now around this game, I wanted to slip my 2 cents into the pot. First off, despite the title of this video, I really strongly don't recommend buying this game at its current price point. Wait for a sale. This is like a $30 game at best. Secondly, I prefer to judge a game based on itself rather than kind of the drama and the stories going on around it. And thirdly, I'm a Rocksteady fanboy. I've played through all the Arkhamverse games and I adored all of them. I even think Origins was an incredibly good time. Now, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is not as good as even Origins is, but I truthfully did enjoy playing through this game. My playthrough ended up being around 12-ish hours, and I took my time playing through a lot of the side content as well, except for the Riddler shit. I couldn't be damned to care about those. I also want to mention that in terms of stability, this game mostly ran like a dream for me. Never really had any missions bug out, and despite some freezes that passed quickly, the game had no real issues when it comes to stability. Though I know this is not everybody's experience, so maybe research how it will run on your rig more if that is something you are worried about. Alright, so firstly, let's talk about the gameplay. Then we will move on to the minefield of a task that talking about the story is. Gameplay-wise, I think this game is Rocksteady. I apologize for that one. Seriously though, blasting through the skies as Deadshot or zipping through the streets as none other than Captain Boomerang is seriously a good time. The movement, the combat, it all feels pretty good after you get the hang of it at around hour 2 or 3. One thing Rocksteady has always done well was giving their experiences a satisfying skill ceiling to work towards. When you played as Batman, you had to earn these new abilities and gadgets, and you'd have to figure out how to use them all together, and it was really cool and unique. While this game doesn't do it as well as those games did, it still is a really fun dance of smacking enemies into the air so you can blast them in the forehead with your rifle. It's just genuinely just such dumb fun. Mixing in the shield harvesting, which is required to stay alive, quite frankly, was good fun as well. You'd have to shoot out an enemy's legs, making them vulnerable, and then complete a melee strike to get your shield back up to snuff. And the game doesn't give you a lot of health, so that shield is the main thing between you and death. However, the game does lack an interesting enemy variety. While the enemies it does have are good, there needs to be more variety, especially in how they look, in my opinion. Truthfully, after finishing the game, I was getting pretty triggered every time I just saw the color purple. My little brother was wearing a purple shirt the other day, and let's just say I have one less brother now. The boss fights were not too bad. They shook things up enough, which was interesting, but some of them were mad disappointing. Like the Batman fight was pretty sad considering who you were up against. It would have worked if it was just a phase in his fight, but it was pretty depressing for the epic showdown with the Batman. Now, in terms of side quests and stories, I thought that they varied decently at first, but the longer you played, the less variety there really seemed to be. The missions in the end were bland and at times even unfun. There was one mission that required you to only do the shield harvest move to kill enemies, and they didn't take damage any other way. And it was damned frustrating to try to complete during solo play. As good as the bots were and are on your team, they didn't understand objectives like that, at least not well. In terms of the character trees, they took pretty long to complete, but they were interesting enough at times. Some of the new abilities it unlocks were fun additions to the character's kit. Other additions felt bland and unimaginative, like plus 50% critical damage when using sniper rifles and that kind of thing. I did really appreciate that they gave each level a tag that shows which playstyle they cater to, so that if you didn't really feel like reading through it all, you really didn't have to. Alright, I'm not really selling you on this, huh? Just because I liked something doesn't mean it's without many flaws, alright? So in terms of gameplay, it itself was fun. It had a skill ceiling that was a blast to achieve, but the things you did with that framework of frenetic and fantastic gameplay was bogged down with relatively dull missions. Not to mention they had trailing missions. God-damned trailing missions in 2024. At least they were better than the ones in the Assassin's Creed games in my opinion, so I'll give it that little cookie. I will say that many of the story missions were pretty fun though. It's amazing what a little genuine context to a situation can do for a mission and its fun factor, even though the missions themselves were still just shoot enemies and purple pimples for 10 minutes. Now, finally, let's talk about that plot and then wrap up with me frantically trying to explain to you why I liked this game. So, you play as 4 members of the Suicide Squad, which you likely already knew or guessed. Your mission is to kill the Justice League, as they have been mind-controlled by Brainiac, who's a bad dude. And truthfully, this is a pretty fucking metal concept. The idea of this game is definitely far better than the execution. I just remember all the theories and such that were swimming around when this bad boy was announced. Simpler times. Just so you know, by the way, spoilers up ahead. Skip to the next chapter of this video if you just want my final impressions. But just imagine if we'd gotten a couple games before this one. What if we'd had a Superman game and maybe a Flash game, all building up to this culmination where we have to kill the heroes we have grown to absolutely love? Would have made the lackluster death scenes hit at least a little bit hard, because by far, my biggest letdown with this game was how the boss fights were handled, and specifically their deaths. I truly wish they would have allowed for more interaction with the Suicide Squad and the Villain League. We got one moment where Flash comes back in control just to tell Wonder Woman that she has to kill them, and that moment is truly pretty powerful. So imagine if we had moments like that with the rest of the League. What if when Harley Quinn gets her moment to off Batman, instead of making him look pitiful, they allowed him to have one final stand against himself, and have him request this of Harley, because he knows he needs to die. Even goddamn better, what if instead of Wonder Woman being the last remaining JL member, we got to work with Batman, giving an easier entry into the squad, figuring out how to kill these guys, because Batman certainly has contingencies, as we know, even within the game. Truly, this game's story is riddled with missed opportunities, and that is incredibly sad. What we did get, though, was a story that is entertaining, genuinely funny at times, and still engaging to experience, assuming you don't remember that this is part of the Arkhamverse. We pretend that that's not how it is. Watching this troop of damned idiots take on basically gods is entertaining in its own right, and these excellent voice casts and next level facial animations really brings what is here to life. A lot of the comedy had no words, just worked with the fantastic facial animations, and it genuinely elevated the comedy in many, many moments. So, yes, I enjoyed this game despite all the flaws I've mentioned. I do not recommend this game for $70, that's for damn sure, but that does not mean I don't think this game has value. And while I don't love live service as a model, this game is pretty tame for what that normally entails. Despite the shitty pre-order business, that was pretty damned awful of them, which if you don't know, the skins you got from pre-ordering could be upgraded into full editions of the skins that had more colors and aesthetic choices, and it costed more money. It's pretty bad, I know. Despite all of that though, I had an absolute blast swinging around the incredible vistas of Metropolis, and experiencing this story felt like it was worth my time. I don't see myself playing any of the endgame content, especially since it sucks ass, but be assured I'll be popping back in to play their new story content when it drops. Content that they've promised will be free, and for a live service, that's pretty damned good of them. Assuming they stick to that. This is Warner Brothers published, after all, you know. Anyhow, if you enjoy how this combat looks to play, or are a DC fan like I am and just enjoy being in that world, this is a fun one to experience, and I think I'm just going to slot it into a different folder than the Arkhamverse in my head, because it truly is a bad game if you try to compare it to the other 3. So despite all the hate that this game is getting, it's dumb fun. And right now in my life where I am, I need some dumb fun, and I appreciate this game for giving that to me. So once again, my final verdict is to get this pupper on a solid sale, and you'll likely have a good time with it. Anyhow, thank you so very much for watching. Give that like button a tap, and if you'd like to see more content from yours truly, don't forget about that lovely subscribe button. But most importantly, have a goddamn wonderful day, and don't die.